Today, I want to share with you my favorite creepy romance reads perfect for Halloween. So, I don't watch a lot of horror movies, and I definitely don't read horror at all, so that definitely limits the books that I read during Halloween. However, there are a few romance novels that give a feeling of Halloween, but not making it too scary. So, if that is something you're interested in, grab a cup of your favorite drink and let's get started. Also, my cat Momo. First off, I want to start with a YA trilogy that's one of my favorites. It was published a few years ago, and while it's not fully romance, there are romantic elements and there is an HEA in the end. So the series is the Madman's Daughter series by Megan Shepherd, and the first book is actually called The Madman's Daughter. This is actually a retelling of The Island of Dr. Moreau, and this follows Juliette Moreau, who is the daughter of Dr. Moreau. Her father is a disgraced scientist, if you're very familiar with that book. I actually haven't read that book, but this book basically is Juliet going to her father's island and discovering all the madness that has, transpired in her, and she discovers her father's experiments and all the craziness that her father did. And, now she discovers what her father has been up to all these years. She's about 16 or 17 in this book, and she's accompanied by their servant slash now assistant to her father, Montgomery, and he basically is the one going with her to the island. The next book in the series is Her Dark Curiosity, and this is a retelling of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And now this takes place in London, and oh my gosh, I won't spoil anything in this book because the villain in this book actually appears in book 1, and book one and book two does have a little bit of a love triangle, but it's not too annoying in my opinion. So I thought it was great. So in Her Dark Curiosity, Juliet leaves the island and goes back to London with Montgomery, and she discovers that one of her father's experiments is loose in London. So that is, I'm not gonna spoil the twist because it's really interesting and I really like how creepy it is. It really is so gothic Victorian and really giving you atmospheric horror-y vibes. The last book in the series is A Cold Legacy, and this one is a retelling of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and oh my god, this was so interesting. So this book takes place immediately after book 2, and Juliet goes to an estate for one of her father's friends, or one of her father's daughter's friends, and she discovers a lot of things. Obviously, they are going to be experimenting here, and there is going to be that Frankenstein person. Two of my favorite characters in this book are actually side characters, and the other character does play a bigger role in this book, but he is so adorable. I won't spoil it because it is part of the plot, but I like that there was sort of an HEA for this person. It was so sweet. Plus, there is a dog, which is my second favorite minor character, and his name is Sharky. He is so adorable in this book. I love books with dogs and pets, so he is Juliet's pet. I won't spoil anything about her pet too because it's also spoilery. So if you haven't read this series before, I highly recommend it. It is perfect for Halloween, and if you have kids, it's also perfect for young kids too. It's really great. And plus, it's a finished series, so you won't have any problems with the cliffhangery type of endings on all of the books. So the next books that I'm going to talk about is actually a series, another series again, and it's called the Sin Brothers series by Rebecca Zanetti. And my personal favorite of the series is Blind Faith, so I'm going to talk about that. But this series follows a group of brothers. They are called the Dean brothers, and they have been experimented by the government, and they belong to a special black ops group. So think Captain America, Super Soldier, plus with the creepiness of the experiment. Most of the series does take place after they've been experimented on, and they're going back to extract revenge for what has been done to them. My favorite of all the books in this series is Blind Faith. This is book 3 in the series. You do not need to read the other books in the series to enjoy this one, but I do recommend that you read them in order, only because there is a lot of world building and there are a lot of plot points that are revealed in the previous books in the series that matter in like the current book that you will be reading. But my favorite is Blind Faith. This is Nate and Audrey's book. This book is actually a second chance romance between Nate, one of the Sin brothers, Dean brothers, Nate, one of the Dean brothers, and Audrey, who is the daughter of one of the lead scientists that experimented on the brothers. So of course there's betrayal. Nate discovers that Audrey was gathering evidence or gathering information, even though she already started falling in love with him and does not want to do her mother's bidding, but she was forced to. So this book is really an edge of your seat book, and I liked it so much. I tell you, if you read this book, you're gonna read, you would want to read the whole series. It's really that interesting. The next book that I have for you is another book that is part of a series, and the book is Evernight by Kristen Callahan. This is book 5 in the Darkest London series, and this is a steampunk romance. I absolutely love this. I actually read this book first without reading the other books in the series, so you can read this book as a standalone. I don't think there are any plot points in the previous books that you need to know, because this really does read like a standalone, but it is set in the same world. So I absolutely love this book. This was my very first Kristen Callahan book. I don't know why I picked up this book, but I do not regret it. This book is actually pretty steamy, and the romance is absolutely perfect. This book is Holly and Thorne's book. So the hero, Will Thorne, is actually cursed, and his curse is that he is slowly getting covered by metal, which is also causing him to lose his sanity. Because of this, he decided to be an assassin, and he is one of the best assassins out there. So he is contracted to assassinate the heroine, Holly Evernight. But when he actually goes there, he discovers that Holly is able to control the spread of his metal. So he decides not to kill her and decides to protect her instead, because apparently there were multiple assassins sent out to assassinate Holly. I absolutely love this. Again, I've said the romance is top notch. This has a little bit of an enemies to lovers romance too, so banter is great, and the steam level is a little bit higher, not erotic, but very steamy. I listened to the audiobook for this and I absolutely enjoyed it, so highly recommend it again. The next book I have for you is another book that is part of a series, and while this one you do need to read the first book in this series to get the full effect of this book. Now the series I'm talking about is the Lords of Deliverance series by Larissa Ione. I actually binged this last December. For some reason I thought it was a December book, but it's actually not. So the book that I highly recommend that you read, though, is Reaver. This is the 5th book in the Lords of Deliverance series. However, the Lords of Deliverance series is also part of the Demonica series. I think the Demonica series is about 15 books, but this is kind of like a spin-off, but also follows the timeline of the Demonica books. I read book 1 in the Demonica series, and it's totally different, but if you want to read this book, I highly recommend that you read book 1 of the Lords of Deliverance series. The first books of the Lords of Deliverance series are the books about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and all the plot points and revelations and secrets actually matter for Reaver's book, but Reaver's book is just so amazing, and that's why I'm recommending that book. So Reaver is an angel, he's an archangel, and the heroine is a fallen angel. The heroine is called Harvester, and she's also in the other books in the series, and she pops in. She's kind of like like a bad angel. So apparently the four horsemen of the apocalypse has two guardians. One is the evil guardian, who is Harvester, and the other is the good guardian, who is Reaver. I tell you, so this romance is a long time coming. It's absolutely amazing. This is an enemies to lovers romance, and the revelations in the fourth book in the series actually matters to this book. So Harvester gets imprisoned in hell, and Reaver goes to save her and busts her out of hell. Unfortunately, when you go into their world, you slowly lose your sanity. So the challenge is to get her out and get out in as little time as possible, so you don't get stuck in there. And wow, the steam factor is great. Banter is amazing. The plot is absolutely great. So there are a lot of secrets that are revealed. I was not expecting anything in this book at all. I did not expect any plot twist, and there is one, and it's amazing. The next book that I have for you is Not So Innocent by Laura Lee Gerke, and this is a historical romance. So this book gave me a lot of Jack the Ripper vibes. The heroine, Sophie, is a psychic, and she actually had a dream where she sees a man getting murdered. So because she believes that her dreams and her psychic abilities are true, she goes to Bow Street and speaks to the detective there, and the hero is actually the person that she was dreaming about who was killed. So there is awesome banter here. The hero, Inspector Mick Dunbar, does not believe her and thinks she's crazy, but the romance and the relationship development between these two characters is amazing. So this is also a thriller because of that murder aspect to it. So I absolutely recommend this for an atmospheric Halloween read. The next book that I have for you is Halfway to the Grave by Janine Frost. This is the first book in the Night Huntress novels, and this is actually an urban fantasy slash paranormal romance, but I think this is a paranormal romance. The only thing that makes this an urban fantasy is because at the end of this book there is a cliffhanger, which you have to read book 2 as well. So there are, I believe, 8 books, 7 or 8 books in the series. I binged this 5 years ago. It is amazing. This is actually a popular series, so if you haven't read this book or even heard about this book yet, I highly recommend that you do read it, because it's really epic. For Halfway to the Grave, this is a forbidden slash enemies to lovers romance where the heroine here, Kat, is a vampire huntress, and the hero, Bones, is a vampire. There is a mystery in this book as well. Kat and Bones team up to find out who is kidnapping all these women. The ending of this book is pretty epic, and it does end in a cliffhanger. You have been warned, because the next book in the series is amazing as well. So I highly recommend reading Halfway to the Grave, and then right after read One Foot in the Grave. The next book that I have for you is Once Burned by Janine Frost. This is the first book in the series, but it's also a spin-off of the Night Huntress series. You don't have to read all the books in the Night Huntress series to love this. I actually read Once Burned first before reading Halfway to the Grave, and Kat and Bones do make a cameo in this book, and I was so intrigued by them that I went and looked to see if they had a book, and Yes, they had a full 8-book or 7-book series. So the hero of this book is Vlad Tepes. If you don't know who he is, where have you been? Vlad Tepes is Dracula, and the heroine in this book is Layla. She is human and she has powers. So her powers were caused by a freak accident, and so what her powers are is when she touches somebody, she's able to discover their deepest and darkest secrets. So Lila gets kidnapped by a group of people who want to find Vlad. So she accidentally connects with Vlad through the mind, and that's what intrigues Vlad to her. So this is an amazing book. Vlad is an amazing character as well. So I highly recommend this. So the next book that I have for you is Corrupt by Penelope Douglas. This is book 1 in the Devil's Night series, and it is fantastic. The heroine in this book actually kind of grows up with the hero, but she ends up dating the hero's younger brother. This is a revenge romance trope, and there are a lot of triggering and disturbing things that happen in this book. I was actually surprised that I loved this book. I'm not really a fan of the type of dark romance slash revenge romance, but this one worked. The banter was great. The romance also was great, and I actually believe that Rika, the heroine, fell in love with Michael, even though they tried to torment her in part of this book. I read this book maybe a couple months ago, and I gave it 4 stars, so I highly recommend it. It is creepy. It is really creepy. So the last books that I'm recommending to you are part of the Say a Spell series by Juliet Cross. The first book is Wolf Gone Wild, and this book is a romance between a wolf shifter and a witch. So the wolf shifter, Mateo, he is unable to shift for about 3 months already, and it is driving him crazy. His alpha wolf is actually in his head and is out of control. And I love this because Mateo is actually a beta hero, but his alpha is pretty alpha, and he actually has an internal monologue slash internal conversation between him and Alpha, and that really cracked me up. Alpha is amazing. Alpha is an amazing character. He is the third main character of this romance, actually, and I love his quirks as well. I love his commentary, even though the heroine cannot hear his thoughts. So the hero actually asks for assistance from the Savoy sisters, and the heroine, Evie, is the Savoy sister that has the power to remove curses. And the romance is absolutely amazing. I love the relationship development between Evie and Mateo and Alpha. Alpha is part of this romance as well. I'm absolutely in love with Alpha here. This is a rom-com paranormal romance, and I thought that this rom-com paranormal romance wouldn't work. This is the first rom-com paranormal that I've read, and I loved it. It's so light and fluffy, but also steamy as well. And I'm so happy that the next book in the series, Don't Hex and Drive, is also out, because I recommend reading this as well. This is a romance between a vampire and one of the Savoy sisters, so she's a witch. The vampire is a Bollywood actor slash Stygorn named Devraj Kumar, and he is a sweetie. He is amazing here. He's another great hero, and the heroine here is very introverted, and I love how Devraj tries to woo her and tries to seduce her, but she is not having it. There are a lot of laugh out loud moments in this book, and I like it as well. This book also involves a mystery where Isadora is assisting Devraj find out who is kidnapping these women. There have been women that were disappearing in New Orleans, and Devraj and Isadora actually work together to find out where these women are disappearing to. So if you haven't read this series, I highly recommend it. Wolf Gone Wild and Don't Hex and Drive. So those are my spooky Halloween romance recommendations for you. Please let me know if you've read any of the books that I've shared with you, and please tell me your thoughts on the books because I like to know your thoughts. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in another video.